Hi, I'm Brenda Gear, the founder of PEEKaMEET. Welcome to the PEEKaMEET method. We're here to share tips and resources with freelancers, job seekers, and entrepreneurs to help them on their journey and overcome all the challenges of COVID. And hopefully we can find some opportunities in this. Tune in frequently to see what tips and resources we have for you. So welcome, Jaime. So we appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences, opportunities and challenges during COVID. Why don't you introduce yourself and what you do?
Hi, thanks for having me on, Brenda. We'll start off with my name, which is Jaime Lindauer, and my husband and I own a distillery down in Loveland, Colorado. But what I want to talk to you about today is my work with moms, women in particular, and the work that I'm doing via workshops and being a keynote speaker to moms and trying to help them navigate to parent from a love-based place opposed to a fear-based place.
So some of these moms, they're parents, students in school, and what kind of feedback have you gotten from them about how this remote learning is happening for them, their experiences, the kids' experiences?
I have to say it's running the gamut. It is. I have some women that are saying to me that their kids are doing really well, that they bend a little more towards an introverted side, and so this works well for them. And then I have other women who their kids are really struggling. It's really a challenge. And then of course the moms are also struggling in how to be helpful and help them navigate this new way of learning.
So how are you managing your position as a keynote speaker during this shutdown?
It's been very interesting because, as you know, part of what I do is about connecting. And when you're connecting in groups with where you can see the nuance of someone's physical being, right? Their eyes and maybe the way they're moving their body or their hands or just the energy in the room gets read a little bit differently than when you're on Zoom. But I had someone, an author, tell me that she was having to do a lot of Zooms to launch her book. And she said something along the lines of the energy that you come into a Zoom with, like if you enter into a Zoom feeling scattered or discombobulated or ill at ease, then that's what's going to be presented on the Zoom. So if you can come into the Zoom feeling present and centered and mindful, then that will be what your Zoom experience will be. And I have found that telling women that has helped them in their own jobs or when they're, counseling their kids to kind of do the same thing, like to shake up their energy a little bit before they come onto the Zoom.
Yeah, you hit on a really great topic about, just the connection of seeing eyes, and I know mirror neurons light up, and it's not quite the same, quite with Zoom. And so I think I've heard a lot of teachers just have this fear of doing it virtually. And have you heard any of those experiences?
Yes, I actually connect with quite a few teachers, and my sister-in-law is a teacher as well. She's a kindergarten teacher, and I'm sensing it's much more difficult with the littles than it is with the olders. It's very hard to capture a 5 or 6 year old's attention for an extended period of time via Zoom. And so the teachers kind of are in that awkward position of having to embrace the new as well. And they're kind of having to set the example of not having to be a know-it-all about it, of just being transparent with their students and saying, this is difficult. This is new for me too. All of this is new. I think once they kind of humanize themselves as a teacher to their students, no matter what the age, it seems to bode a little bit easier.
Yeah, so imagine the first grader telling the teacher, turn it off or hit this button or hit that one. So we talked about some of the challenges of COVID-19 and just doing things virtually. Have you found that there are any opportunities doing things virtually or learning something a different way?
Yes, I would say that what this has done for me has kind of fueled a fire into expansion. I think I'm going to be able to hit a broader base in different cities, because before I'd always have to be in the city. And so I think I can hit more cities, more organizations, more companies, not just schools. And I'm also considering, since, as you know, I've had some time to think, I'm also considering also offering this to men.
Oh.
I think there is a niche for men as well who are wanting to parent in a really mindful way.
Yeah, I think there has totally been a pivot where men are much more hands-on than they probably used to be. We do have a lot more women in the workplace, so it's kind of like shifting that balance. So you talked about offering your services to other groups or organizations. Do you have any in mind?
I've had some friends ask me about their companies, their businesses, especially in the Bay Area, where they're wanting to get right now they say women, but eventually I'm hoping that men will be included in that, of just kind of helping them get together and navigate during this time in a very connected, mindful way of they all have these things in common, right? And I think coming back to remembering that we all have far more in common than we don't. And if we can keep tapping back into that and be transparent with one another about what our struggles are, instead of having to put this facade on. I used to say to the women when they'd come into the room, into the circle, you know, leave your representative outside. When you come in, bring in your full authentic self. And I think it's making for the opportunity to have better workplace friendships.
Can you give us a teaser, like a couple of things that you teach these people or moms or dads in these workshops?
Well, yes, I hit on a lot of topics. Gratitude is always a big one, because I think that that's a springboard and you can pretty much, you know, go into anything after that. Meditation, I'm big into that. And the first question people always ask me about meditation is, you know, I don't think I'm good at it because I can't get my mind to turn off. And for that, I would just offer, for me, meditation is not turning off my mind. That's kind of impossible. I have a monkey mind that's jacked up on a fifth of Jack Daniels, like it's just going. So for me, meditation is just not becoming attached to any of the thoughts that go across my mind during meditation. So meditation. And then the third one that I hit on that's really been striking is mindful listening, and not listening with the idea of trying to regurgitate back up what your thoughts are on the topic, but actually mindfully listening to what the person is saying.
Is there a tip that you could give a mom or dad that have recently lost their job, or they had to stay home, you know, to be with their children, to help them with their schoolwork? You know, just some piece of advice just to keep them motivated. As you mentioned earlier about connections, if they're not in the workplace, sometimes you miss those adult connections, and you're here in your home, just with the kids, and sometimes we forget that we need that adult communication.
Right. Gosh, I think I have a couple, but one that bubbles up right away is just the word pivot. I think if you're able to pivot emotionally on things, pivot physically, you know, that saying of move your body and your mind will follow, you know, just kind of emotion kind of can shift things up. So I think being able to pivot, not think of it as having to be something as the way it used to be, and being able to pivot into a new way of thinking. I would also offer, again, connection, just connecting. And you and I've talked about this before. It's so critical and it's so important. And I think now in this time of making the connection be a little bit different, I don't think it serves any of us to just do the patent question of how are you? Because everyone is a hot mess in a different way on a different day right now, right? It's just kind of an odd thing. And then you're kind of forced into saying, I'm fine, thank you, how are you? And it just almost seems too robotic for the time that we're living in right now. So I would offer, maybe think a little bit about how you're making that connection with somebody. Like maybe you could phrase it a little differently, like, hey, how are your spirits today? That throws them into a little bit of a different connection than if you just say, how are you? And you're going to get a little bit of a different answer. And for people that I know more on a personal level, I might say, how's your heart today? How's your heart?
Yeah.
And I've often, for people in the workplace, I've been saying, maybe you just say, instead of how are you, you could say, is there anything keeping you up at night? Are you losing sleep over anything these days? Just try to find a different way to connect. And I think you'll find yourself feeling better, and they'll feel better that we're reaching out in a different way.
I really like the how's your spirit today, because it opens it up to so many different things, different topics that they, oh, I can talk about this with, with this person.
Right.
Did any of your friends or family members lose their job during COVID?
Thankfully, no one has lost their job, but quite a few of them have shifted their responsibility or their days or their hours or their territory. So there's been a lot of shifting and renegotiating what their positions are, but thankfully no one has actually lost their position.
Isolation has been a huge struggle for a lot of us. What are some ways that you dealt with the isolation?
Great question. For me personally, and what I do talk to other women about, and this is going to sound like a cliche, but it is being of service. It's finding ways to be of service to other people. I think really bounces you out of your own head and kind of into a different heart space. And I think that does help with isolation. It helps me with isolation. I have spent 12 years working with suicide prevention and mental health. And I often find that is the best way to kind of break out of your own self, is to be of service. Right. And it doesn't have to be this grand idea of being a service, of going into a place or going into a volunteer place or working the suicide hotlines. If you can do that, that's great. But sometimes being of service is being of service to your friends and your family. And I can't think of a better way to break out of isolation. On a personal level, also for me, breaking out of isolation is I love to tweak recipes, trying to figure out ways of taking like white sugar out of a recipe or white flour out of a recipe and just playing in the kitchen and just kind of going on an intuitive cooking day. And so I do that to kind of break out of feeling isolated and stuck. It kind of helps me flow a little bit better.
You need to send those treats over here.
Yes, I
can. That's one way I think I've dealt with it, eating. So for me, I feel like PTSD, the isolation, like people can resort to drugs or alcohol or other ways to deal with isolation. So I'm glad that you hit that topic just about mental suicide and mental wellness.
It's a real deal, and on that level, and then in the level of women contacting me who have come through my programs and just feeling like their relationships with significant others are crumbling, right? Just really crumbling. And obviously, I think that maybe there were cracks in the foundation of some of those relationships. I don't think that the pandemic actually made those things happen, but I think that they're heightened, and we have to be more aware and more compassionate about what's going on. Like, what is the thing underneath the thing underneath the thing, to kind of figure all of that out.
Well, you mentioned pivoting earlier, and sometimes people don't know how to pivot. What was the thing that for you that said, hey, I need to pivot, I have to change, I don't want to be stuck in this way, this is the way I used to do it, but today I got to move forward and do it that way?
Gosh, I have to say, because we are a society of doers and not beers, and I was that person. I was a type A personality posing as a type B. So I'm used to doing. But I think for myself, until I sat in some stillness and just pondered and went, for walks where I didn't have a podcast in or music in, or wasn't chatting on the phone with anyone, just having that silence of letting some creativity and newness kind of simmer back up for me. And I had to just shift from my head to my heart. And that was the only way new ideas were going to come to me without me being resistant to them.
What are some good books, blogs, or some type of resources that someone's working remotely, or a mom or a dad in this case, that they could read and that would inspire them and just keep them going?
Well, one of my favorite books that I recently read is by Shasta Nelson, called The Business of Friendship. And that was such a new revelation to me, because I was kind of old school, where you were told not to be really good friends with people in the workplace, right? Not to, you could go out for happy hour occasionally, but you wouldn't share too much. And reading that book and then reading it the second time really opened me up to that I maybe had some antiquated ideas about having friendships in the workplace. And so I think that was a great read for me during this time of kind of opening myself up for that, in a new way. I love Rich Roll. I love Lewis Howes. I love Ed Milet. I love Brene Brown. I'm kind of a junkie in the podcast arena, so my tastes kind of go all over the place. I'll listen to Joe Rogan. I'll listen to any of them. I'm kind of a wide variety. But as far as a good read, I would have to say The Business of Friendship. And my cousin, actually, Misty, has a podcast that's been out for about a year, and it's called I Am Her.
Ooh.
And it's really good. It's about navigating just through life and with her girlfriend. And it's the two of them on the podcast. And it's just really delightful.
I like the title.
Yeah, the title is great. And they're two fantastic women. And it's called I Am Her. And I think it's real
Definitely
good.
got to check that out. Jamie, do you have any exercises or anything that people can do just to help them to get through this COVID-19 or the crisis they're in?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things that I like to do and I recommend people doing, but I'm going to leave you with one, and it's peace begins with me. And so it can kind of take you all the way across the board as far as work, personal life. You can teach your kids, you can teach your significant others. I do it with my whole family. And it's when you feel yourself kind of starting to spin, no matter what the topic is about, you put your hands straight up, and that's kind of in a releasing motion. And then you go, peace begins with me. And you'll notice that the first couple of times you do it, you're kind of doing it quickly because you might be feeling anxious. So you go, peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. But what you want to do is start slowing it down. And then it's peace begins with me. And then that's the circle. So peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. And I've had to do that underneath a table in meetings before, just to get myself centered back. And you don't have to say it out loud, but if you do this under the table, it helps kind of move you from your head into your heart and kind of slow it down a little bit.
I like that. It's definitely for the meetings, but I think that would be very helpful at night when you're trying to sleep.
For sure.
So I learned, I believe in the power of referrals. So for me, it was always usually about a job or helping someone, and I give a lot of unsolicited advice in that realm because I feel like I'm good at it. But we all have an ask. What would be your ask?
I might have a couple.
Good. I learned we can have three.
My first ask would be, if you know of any, if anyone knows of anybody that would benefit by me coming in virtually to help their organization, I'm wide open for that. But even bigger than that, my ask would be that all of us be as kind to ourselves right now as we can be, and just show grace to ourselves, and hopefully we're showing grace to other people around us. This is new and this is hard, and we need to have grace and kindness, and treat ourselves as kindly as we would a loved one or a beloved pet, right? Sometimes people treat their pets better than they do themselves, and I think I would just ask for us to be extra kind and show extra grace. And I guess what kind of dovetails into that would be not to take things so personally. Like when you're out there interviewing for new positions or whatever the situation is, having conversations, difficult conversations, just not to take things personally. I think in the last 2 years, I found myself, every time I was entering into a space of going in as a facilitator, I was having to say, I'm going to be throwing a lot of ideas out there at you, and please don't take anything personally. And I'm from the South, and we have that saying, take the meat and throw away the bones. So I found for the last 2 years, I've been saying that at the top of every talk I was giving. And last March, I was giving a talk in San Francisco, and a woman came up to me afterwards, and she said, I loved everything you said, except for that thing about take the meat and throw away the bones. I'm a vegetarian, and that really bothered me. And it just solidified to me how easily we can get agitated or rubbed the wrong way. And I just think we need to be very cautious about that. And I think it's Rumi that has a quote that says something along the lines of, how will we ever become polished if we get rubbed the wrong way by every little thing? And that's what I would ask us to do, is just not get so irritated.
Dust it off.
Just dust it off.
Dust it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Jamie, that was all very helpful. So your ask is great, but how do moms and dads get a hold of you, or organizations that want to bring you in for the moms and dads?
So it's my first and last name, and you just have to make sure you spell it correctly, which is JaimeLindauer@gmail.com.
Okay, we'll be sure to put it on the title too, or in text, so that our viewers get to see it. We appreciate you joining us today. Just very enlightening, all that you shared with us, and you had some great recommendations on podcasts and books, so we definitely need to check those out and just be uplifted every day.
Every day.